Shirley Jackson is one of the best writers in the gothic horror genre. Her ability to capture small town life and to twist it to reveal its insidious underbelly is truly genius. How the status quo can lead to madness and entrapment. My favorite book of Shirley Jackson's to emphasize these themes is We Have Always Lived in a Castle. Now, for a quick overview of the book, we are told the story from the narration of Mary Catherine, nicknamed Merricat, who lives with her older sister and Uncle Julian. But where's the rest of the family? At the end of the first paragraph, we don't have to wait long, we find out the rest of the family was murdered. This gothic novel deals with family lineage decay, murder, isolation, and so much more. So if you're interested, please subscribe. I like to do book analysis, reading vlogs, study lives, and shorts to hopefully grow all of our vocabulary. So also considering this is a summary video, there will be spoilers. So continue at your own risk. It is a bit of a brief summary. I'm not going into all the nitty-gritty details because that's what I want to do with my analysis videos. Let's get started. Sitting in a large forested estate, the Blackwood mansion is isolated against a hostile town. An agoraphobic older sister named Constance tends to her gardens and cooks delicious meals for the family. An ailing Uncle Julian obsessively rewrites about the horrible night everyone died. And Mary Catherine, Merricat, feels at peace in the family routines and isolation. The rest of the family died 6 years ago. Arsenic was placed into the sugar bowl that everyone sprinkled over their berries. Constance was put on trial for the murder but was acquitted. Merricat had to live in an orphanage while the ordeal took place. And Uncle Julian survived the arsenic poisoning. He now lives in a wheelchair. And Merricat here in the front of the cover, she has quite witch-like qualities. She has little superstitions where to protect them in the house, she has placed family belongings throughout the estate. She's buried marbles by the river. Some of the only outside social interactions the sisters get, well, I guess including Uncle Julian, is a friend of their late mother's who visits on the Sundays, a doctor who checks up on Julian to make sure he's still doing well, and Merricat venturing into town to get them books or food. Like they even withdrew their money from the bank, even going so far as to disconnect their line because after the murder, they were just receiving really vicious phone calls through their father's actions. They were isolated already from the rest of the town, but after their family died, that's just gotten smaller and smaller. I think both by their own will and the judgment and hostility of the townspeople. So when their late mother's friend comes to visit, she brings an uninvited guest, one of her own friends, and Julius provides some information about that infamous night. Constance didn't call for help right away. She took the sugar bowl into the kitchen and washed it out, claiming there was a spider. So Constance and Merricat's mother, father, their brother, as well as Julian's wife died, and Julian was also supposed to pass, but he did not. He survived. And Constance was acquitted because it was just obvious that she didn't do it, even though she had this really weird reaction while her family was dying. Oh, messy. Now this book is taking place in the spring season, which is the season of change. Constance is loving how her garden is going and is going to bloom. She's inspired to make new and delicious dishes. Now Constance is starting to get the inclination to leave the house, which absolutely terrifies Merricat. So much so that she feels like a chill in her body. And Merricat throughout the book continues the phrase of wanting to live on the moon and wishing for her and Constance to live there and for it just to be this beautiful, isolating experience for them. And as a safety precaution, Merricat goes to check on her items that she has buried in the Blackwood estate. These items that she feels almost like a superstition will protect her, Constance, and even Uncle Julian and keep the family safe. And as she's checking up on all of them, she sees that her father's ledger, which is a book that he kept with names and the amount of money people owed him. He was quite obsessive about money. This book she has nailed to a tree and it has fallen, and she believes the nail has possibly rusted out. It's not a big deal. She'll go back home and get something else to nail to the tree. But she's hungry and kind of forgets and returns to the house with her cat Jonas, which is a great character in the book. And they return for lunch. Now, to Merricat's dismay, her and Constance are talking about the possibility of Constance leaving the house. And it's really threatening to Merricat, and she feels anxious so much that she's like bound by wire and absolutely terrified. Because Merricat loves Constance so much, Constance says she's cold. Merricat goes upstairs to get her a sweater. She hears a knock at the door and the voice asking for Constance to let him in. Merricat has a flashback to after the family's death and reporters just wanting to ask Constance for a quote about what happened to the family and this predatory system that Merricat needs to protect Constance from. But unfortunately, by the time Merricat goes to grab the sweater and come back down, we meet cousin Charles, who is at the door and has gone around to go into the house from the back where the kitchen is, where Constance is, and the two are sitting at the kitchen table waiting for Merricat to come in. Cousin Charles has been out of the picture. His family told him to stay away from the two sisters and the uncle because of the bad light the family was getting. So his father has recently died and he has decided to reach back out to the two sisters, Constance and Merricat. And he is described as being Constance and Merricat's father's double. He looks exactly the same, but Merricat describes him as a big white face with a big white smile. And she says, the big white face, the big white smile, making him other than, almost like he's not even human. You don't see his facial features. It's just a blank face, which is actually pretty terrifying when you think about it, and starts to show what might have been going on in the family before most of them died. Now, Charles quickly asserts his dominance over the family, taking up this father figure role immediately. He's influencing the love that Constance once had towards Uncle Julian and Merricat to now see like what's wrong. For example, Uncle Julian, once very lovingly cared for by Constance, now they're starting to say he should go in a home. It's not good for him to be here. And while he has his bad days, he is able to have homemade meals cooked for him. He's in his own bed rather than just being taken care of by nurses. And it's actually even making Uncle Julian weaker and sicker the longer Charles stays. The two men do not get along, with Uncle Julian often telling Charles to shut up. We're starting to see more anger, hostility, arguments in the house between the two men, as well as how Constance is now talking down to Merricat. Merricat's supposed to be 18, but she acts quite young, almost acting like she's 14 years old, which would have been when her family died. Like, Constance is saying Merricat should be going out and meeting friends, dating, not staying inside all the time, that the two sisters shouldn't be together anymore because Constance is almost 30, and again, Merricat is 18. And Constance and Charles almost start to take up this parental role in the house, ruining the peace and happiness, even if it was a little dysfunctional, of the three. So I think in total, Charles has been at the Blackwood estate for 4 days. It's very quick, and his influence is just awful. And Merricat, with her superstitious type of mind, believes that maybe ruining some of his stuff will help him to leave. So the book that fell in the woods, from the beginning, she replaces it with one of the father's watches. Charles is now staying in the dead father's old room, like both physically and metaphorically taking up that fatherly role. And Charles finds it in the woods and absolutely freaks out. It's a gold watch. He's yelling at Constance about what it's worth and how she ruined it and how could you just leave it outside. And Constance is like, oh, it's just Merricat. Like, it's not a big deal, but he is freaking out. Still doesn't leave. Merricat takes it up a notch, and she's dumping water on the mattress. She's bringing in twigs and dirt from outside, hoping he'll leave. And that leads Charles to talking with Constance, saying Merricat needs to go somewhere else. This is not appropriate how she's acting. And Constance is believing him. Is this a reenactment of maybe the father and mother's discussions about Merricat? She's very bold and quite assertive. So is that too much for the family? After this conversation, she stomps upstairs and quietly tiptoes into Cousin Charles's room. His tobacco pipe is still slightly lit. The embers are still glowing. And so she takes it and dumps it into the garbage. And of course that starts a fire. Like I said, they disconnected their phone line, so they can't phone the fire department. So Cousin Charles, like a crazy man, runs to the village to get help. Constance calmly brings Uncle Julian into his room so he can grab his papers and get his, essentially kind of his memoir. But the fire department comes, and Constance, she's agoraphobic and doesn't like being around people. So the two sisters run out to the porch, and that's when the fire department goes into the house. Charles is there, and the whole town has come to see the Blackwood estate burned down. Like I said, there's animosity between the two, and they kind of want to see this great house that they have never been allowed to look at because the property has been barricaded against the rest of the town being able to see it. And as the fire is put out, one rock gets thrown into the window, which just brings out the madness of the town, and they terrorize the Blackwood estate. They run into the house, they're ripping furniture, cutlery out of the drawers. The sisters try to run for the woods, but the townspeople block them. They enclose on them, circling, singing a kind of sinister tune. I'm not gonna sing it for you, but Merricat and Connie, would you like a cup of tea? Oh no, said Merricat, you'll poison me. Merricat and Connie, would you like to go to sleep? Down in the boneyard, 10 feet deep. Uncle Julian's doctor had also heard of the fire and comes out of the house saying that Uncle Julian has passed away. Everyone stops their tormenting, and Charles asks, did she do it? Being more engaged with the villagers' thoughts and actions than sticking with his family. The doctor says no, and eventually the crowd dissipates and the girls run into the forest. Now this is, while reading it for the first time, it was a little disappointing almost, but this is where we find out what happened 6 years ago. Merricat has a hideaway in the woods where she sometimes sleeps. The first night Charles stayed in the house, Merricat stayed in her hideaway, and this is where she brings Constance after the ordeal that has happened to them. And in her anger, she says, I'm going to put death in all their food and watch them die. Constance says, the way you did before. Merricat says yes. So Merricat killed her family. After spending the night in the woods, don't worry, Jonas is fine. The little kitty is with Merricat. The three of them return to the house. The whole top has been burnt down. Everything's incredibly dirty, upturned. They return to the kitchen and barricade themselves in, closing off windows so no one will be able to see them again. And throughout the next couple of days, Merricat makes barriers so people can't come around the sides of the house to get in the back where the kitchen is. And they almost become legends, like ghosts that haunt this house. And villagers once in a while come to the house to sit on the ground and see the infamous Blackwood estate. And the villagers, feeling remorse, offer baskets of food to the girls saying, please, I'm so sorry for what we did. And Merricat kind of gets her wish of living on the moon with Constance because they are in pure isolation. They get to spend their time together with no influence from the outside world. I hope you enjoyed my little overview summary of We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. For my next two videos, I'm gonna go more into specific details, but I thought a summary so you can get an idea of the arc of the story. I'm also trying to improve my summarizing skills, so I have taken lots of notes in this book. It has become one of my favorites. This is like a 150-page book, and something that I've learned recently that really opened my eyes is when you have specifically shorter books like this, really treat it that the author, every single word has the intention of impacting you, that there's a reason why they've chosen these words and these actions and to deep dive into their meanings. Like, for example, when we talk about Jonas and the fact that Merricat killed her whole family, but is very kind and sweet to this little animal. And cats can be quite vulnerable, so I think it shows Merricat isn't an awful person. You know, she's not a psychopath. From how we see Charles interact with her and how she relates him to her father, shows how the family treated her versus how she can act towards something who's actually innocent. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I will see you in the next one.